My sister always mocked my lame hobbies, building her perfect life around this Italian dream villa. Now, her grand arrival to celebrate her triumph is about to become the biggest, most public defeat of her life, orchestrated entirely by me. The gravel crunched under the tires of my ridiculously understated rental car, a sound that seemed to echo across the entire valley. Each stone was a tiny explosion marking my arrival. Before me, nestled into the sun-drenched Italian hillside, was the Villa Aurelia. It wasn't just a house, it was a landmark of my sister Clara's ambition. Its terracotta roof glowed like a warm ember against the impossibly blue sky. Cypress trees stood like sentinels guarding its sweeping terraces, and the faint sweet scent of jasmine and lemon groves drifted through my open window. For the last 5 years, this villa had been the star of Clara's vision board, the centerpiece of her Instagram feed, the constant refrain in every family conversation. "When I get the villa," she'd say, not if. To Clara, desire was the same as destiny. I killed the engine, and the silence that followed was profound, broken only by the hum of cicadas. In my hand, I clutched a heavy, ornate brass key. It felt alien, too grand for my calloused fingers, which were more accustomed to the delicate work of restoring antique paper and wood than holding the deed to a multi-million-dollar estate. For a moment, I just sat there, looking at the place that had haunted my family's aspirations for half a decade. I could practically see Clara's ghost on the main balcony, posing in a flowing white dress, one hand on her hip, the other holding a glass of Prosecco, with a caption already composed in her head. "Girl boss. Manifesting my dreams. Tuscan life." The thought brought a bitter smile to my lips. She had manifested this, in a way, just not for herself. My family always saw me as the odd one out, the quiet, dusty brother to my vibrant, dazzling sister. Clara was in marketing, a high-flying influencer who built a brand on looking effortlessly perfect. Her life was a curated collection of beautiful moments, sponsored posts, and exotic locations. I, on the other hand, was a restorer of antique board games and puzzles. My world was one of shellac, wood glue, and the meticulous hunt for a missing meeple from a 1920s German tabletop game. To Clara, and by extension the rest of my family, my hobby was a source of gentle and sometimes not so gentle mockery. It was my lame little project, my failure to launch, my excuse for not getting a real job. The last time we were all together for Christmas, the humiliation had been particularly sharp. We were sitting around the dinner table, and my dad asked me how the toy business was going. Before I could even answer, Clara let out a theatrical sigh. "Oh, Dad, don't encourage him," she said, swirling the wine in her glass. "Leo, honey, I love you, but when are you going to grow up? You're almost 30, living in a tiny apartment that smells like old paper, playing with dusty boxes. I just worry about you." Her voice was laced with that syrupy, fake concern she was so good at. My mom just nodded along, her brow furrowed with genuine worry, a worry Clara had expertly planted and cultivated over the years. "It's not just playing, Clara," I'd said, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's history. It's preservation. Some of these pieces are incredibly rare." She'd laughed, a bright tinkling sound that made my stomach clench. "Rare? Leo, it's a board game. It's cute that you have a passion, really. But a passion is supposed to supplement a life, not become a substitute for one. Look at me. I'm about to close on the down payment for the villa. I'm building an empire. You're gluing a cardboard knight back together." Her fiancé, a slick guy named Marcus, who looked like he was born in a tailored suit, had smirked. "Hey, leave him alone. Someone's got to keep the Dungeons and Dragons crowd happy." The table erupted in polite laughter, and I just stared down at my plate, my face burning. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell them about the 18th century puzzle box I was authenticating, a piece so complex and rare it was rumored to have belonged to a royal cryptographer. I wanted to explain the thrill of finding a complete mint-condition pre-war edition of Monopoly with all its original pewter tokens, but I knew it was useless. In their eyes, I was the family failure, the quirky recluse. Clara was the sun, and I was just a forgotten planet in her orbit. "It's cute," she'd said. That word, cute, was the dagger. It was the most condescending, dismissive word in her arsenal. I shook the memory from my head and finally got out of the car. The Tuscan sun was warm on my skin. I walked up the stone path, the brass key feeling heavier with every step. I didn't use it on the massive, ancient-looking wooden door. Instead, I pulled out a small, modern key fob from my pocket and pressed a button. With a quiet, satisfying click, the door unlocked. The villa wasn't just owned, it was updated. My money, my rules. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The air was cool and smelled of stone and fresh paint. A massive foyer with a vaulted ceiling and a sweeping staircase greeted me. Sunlight streamed through arched windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. It was a blank canvas, empty, waiting. Clara had fantasized about filling these rooms with rustic chic furniture, oversized art, and of course a constant stream of beautiful people for her content. She had no idea the auction for the puzzle box, the one she would have called a dusty old toy, had closed at a price that would make her entire influencer empire look like a lemonade stand. She had no idea I'd paid for this place in cash, with enough left over to live 10 lifetimes. I wandered through the empty rooms, my footsteps echoing on the marble floors. I found the main terrace, the one from all her pictures. The view was breathtaking, a rolling tapestry of olive groves and vineyards under the vast Italian sky. I leaned against the stone balustrade, the same spot where Clara had dreamed of taking her triumphant photos. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a message from my mom in the family group chat. "On our way to the airport. So excited for Clara's big surprise party at the villa. She is going to freak out when she sees that we all came to celebrate her closing the deal. You're still landing tomorrow, right, Leo? Don't be late." I smiled. A slow, genuine smile. Clara hadn't closed the deal. Her financing had fallen through at the last minute, a fact she had conveniently hidden from the family to avoid embarrassment. I knew because the seller's agent had told my agent. She was probably scrambling right now, trying to figure out a way to save face. She had no idea the house had been sold from under her. To me. And the surprise party she thought was for her? Oh, it was still happening. They were all on their way. Clara, Marcus, my parents, my aunts and uncles. They were all coming here, to this villa, expecting to toast to Clara's success. My phone buzzed again. It was Clara herself, a single smug message with a photo of her and Marcus clinking champagne glasses in a first-class airplane cabin. The caption read, "The Eagle is landing. See you at my villa, little brother. Try not to bring any dusty board games to the party. XOXO." I typed back a simple reply. "Can't wait. I'm already here. I saved you the best room." I locked my phone and took a deep breath of the Tuscan air. The party was in 2 days, the guests were on their way, and the guest of honor had absolutely no idea that she was about to walk into her greatest dream, only to find that it was now my reality. The surprise was going to be bigger than any of them could possibly imagine. My heart hammered in my chest, a frantic, wild drumbeat of dread and exhilaration. Because as I stood there on that terrace, another car, this one a sleek black Mercedes, started making its way up the long gravel driveway. That wasn't part of the plan. No one was supposed to be here for another 2 days. The car stopped, and a woman got out of the driver's seat. It wasn't my mother, it wasn't my aunt, it was Clara. My blood ran cold. For a split second, my entire plan, my perfectly constructed moment of vindication, felt like it was dissolving into the Tuscan heat. This was not supposed to happen. Her early arrival was a complication I hadn't factored in, a rogue variable in my meticulous equation of revenge. My first instinct was to duck back inside, to hide in one of the cavernous, empty rooms and pretend I was never there. But then I looked at the brass key in my hand. I thought of the years of condescension, the dismissive pats on the head, the constant draining feeling of being the family's afterthought. No, hiding was the old Leo's move. The new Leo, the one who owned the ground she was standing on, was done hiding. I took a deep breath, straightened my shirt, and walked calmly to the edge of the terrace, leaning against the stone balustrade just as she was approaching the main steps. Marcus was getting their luggage out of the Mercedes, his movements oozing the smug satisfaction of a man who believed he'd won at life. Clara stopped dead in her tracks when she saw me, her perfectly shaped eyebrows shot up towards her hairline, and the designer sunglasses slipped down her nose. Leo. Her voice was sharp, a mixture of utter disbelief and annoyance, as if she'd found a stray cat lounging on her brand-new sofa. What in God's name are you doing here? You're 2 days early, and how did you even get in? I gave her a small, placid smile. Hello, Clara. Marcus. You made good time. Don't hello Clara me, she snapped, marching up the steps, her heels clicking angrily on the stone. This is a private residence. You can't just let yourself in. I'm here to do a final walkthrough with the agent before the papers are officially signed tomorrow. You're trespassing. Marcus had caught up now, dropping a Louis Vuitton duffel bag at his feet. Dude, seriously, a little eager to see your sister's new digs? Kinda creepy to break in, man. I ignored him and kept my eyes on Clara. Her face was a mask of indignation. She was already picturing the stern phone call she would make to the real estate agent, the dramatic story she would tell the family about her weirdo brother who just couldn't respect her boundaries. I didn't break in, I said calmly. I held up the key fob I'd used earlier. I have a key, Clara scoffed, crossing her arms. Impossible. The agent has the only set. She's meeting me here in an hour. Did you jimmy a lock? Leo, I swear, if you've damaged anything... The owner gave it to me, I said, cutting her off. My voice was even, betraying none of the adrenaline coursing through my veins. He wanted me to check on the place before my guests arrive. A flicker of confusion crossed her face. The owner? What are you talking about? I'm the owner. Well, I will be, tomorrow morning. And what guests? Guests for the party, I said simply. The one you planned. It was a great idea getting the whole family together here. Really special. Clara and Marcus exchanged a look. I could see the wheels turning in her head, trying to process my words, trying to fit them into her world where she was the star and I was a minor, forgettable character. The only conclusion she could possibly come to was that I was delusional. Okay, I don't know what kind of fantasy world you're living in, but it's over, she said, pulling out her phone. I'm calling security and the agent. This is absolutely insane. I wouldn't bother, I said, pushing myself off the balustrade. Her name is Signora Rossi, right? Lovely woman. She told me your financing hit a snag. A pretty big snag from what I understand. It's a shame. You must have been so disappointed when the bank called. The color drained from Clara's face. Her fingers froze over the screen of her phone. That was it. That was the first real crack in her perfect facade. She hadn't told anyone about the financing. It was her secret shame, the one detail that ruined her perfect manifested its story. How did you know that? She stammered. Marcus looked at her, his smug expression faltering for the first time. Clara? What's he talking about? It doesn't matter, she hissed, recovering quickly. We sorted it out. A wire transfer is pending. The deal is closing tomorrow, Leo. Now I'm telling you for the last time, get off my property before I have you removed. I almost felt a pang of pity for her. Almost. She was fighting so hard, clinging to a reality that no longer existed. That's the thing, Clara, I said, taking a slow step towards her. The wire transfer that went through wasn't yours. The deal didn't close tomorrow. It closed yesterday afternoon. I reached into the inner pocket of my jacket and pulled out a folded sheaf of papers. I let them unfold. the crisp letterhead of the Italian Realty Group clear in the bright sunlight. I held it out for her to see. The deed of sale. Signed, sealed, and official. She stared at the document, her eyes scanning the text, her brain refusing to comprehend what it was seeing. Marcus peered over her shoulder, his jaw going slack. Her gaze darted from the paper to my face and back again, searching for the trick, the punchline. "It's a fake," she whispered, her voice trembling. "This is a sick joke, Leo." "Is it?" I walked past her to the huge wooden door. I took out the ornate brass key, the one the previous owner had passed down through generations, the one Signora Rossi had personally handed me when the sale was finalized. I inserted it into the ancient lock. It turned with a heavy, definitive thud. I pulled the key out and held it up between my thumb and forefinger, letting it catch the light. "The thing about my lame hobby, Clara," I said, my voice quiet but carrying in the sudden, thick silence, "is that you learn a lot about value. You learn that some things that look like old, dusty junk to people like you, are actually priceless. And you learn that sometimes the most valuable things aren't shiny at all." She just stood there, speechless, her entire world tilting on its axis. The Villa Aurelia, her ultimate prize, her symbol of success, was gone. And it had been snatched away by the last person on earth she ever would have considered a threat. Her face was a storm of confusion, fury, and utter humiliation. Marcus looked like he'd just been punched in the gut. They were trapped here, on my doorstep, with all their expensive luggage and shattered expectations. And in 2 days, the entire family would be arriving, ready to celebrate a victory that had turned into her most crushing defeat. "Well," I said, pocketing the key and gesturing towards the grand foyer behind me, "don't just stand there in the sun. Come on in. I'm sure we can find a room for you somewhere. The staff quarters are in the back. They're a bit small, but I'm told they're quite comfortable." For a long moment, the only sound was the incessant buzz of the cicadas outside. Clara stared at me, her mouth slightly agape, her perfectly applied lipstick suddenly looking garish against her pale skin. The suggestion of the staff quarters had landed like a physical blow. Then, her shock morphed into pure, incandescent rage. A low, guttural sound escaped her throat before she found her words. "You son of a bitch!" she hissed, her voice shaking with fury. "You think this is funny? You think you can waltz in here and ruin my life as some kind of pathetic joke?" She took a step towards me, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. "This isn't your world, Leo. You don't get to have this. This is my dream. I worked for this. I manifested this. You spent your life hiding in a dusty little apartment playing with toys." "They're not toys, Clara," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "And you didn't work for this. You tried to get a loan for this, a loan that was denied. There's a difference." "Don't you dare," she seethed. "Where did you get money like this? Did you rob a bank? Sell drugs? I'm calling the police. I'm telling them my unstable brother has fabricated some documents and is squatting in my house." Marcus, who had been silent until now, finally spoke, though his voice lacked its usual cocksure tone. "Yeah, man, this is crazy. You can't just forge a deed to a place like this. Clara, let's just call the authorities and get this sorted." He put a hand on her arm, but she shook it off violently. "No, I want to hear it from him." She spat, her eyes locked on mine. "I want to hear the ridiculous lie you've cooked up. Tell me, Leo, tell me how the king of forgotten board games suddenly became a real estate tycoon." I let the silence stretch for a moment, savoring the look on her face. The grand foyer, with its vaulted ceilings and echoing marble floors, felt like a courtroom, and she was finally on the stand. "You remember that 18th century puzzle box I told you about at Christmas?" I began. "The one I was authenticating? The one you said was a dusty old box that was a substitute for a life? What does some stupid old toy have to do with anything?" she snapped impatiently. "That stupid old toy was the Vaucanson cipher box," I said. "It was believed to be lost for over 200 years. It belonged to a French cryptographer and was rumored to hold the key to a lost royal treasury. Turns out the rumors were true, but not in the way people thought. The value wasn't in what it held, but in what it was. It was a one-of-a-kind masterpiece of mechanics and artistry. I spent a year verifying its provenance. A private collectors consortium in Geneva caught wind of it. I paused, letting my words hang in the air. The auction closed last week. The final bid would be enough to buy this villa 5 times over, Clara. The air went out of her. Her rage, so fiery and potent just a moment ago, seemed to deflate, leaving behind a hollow, bewildered shell. She looked from me to Marcus and back again, as if searching for a cue card that would tell her how to react to this impossible new reality. Marcus's expression had changed completely. The hostility was gone, replaced by a keen, calculating curiosity. His loyalty, I could see, was not to a person, but to a portfolio. "Wait," he said, taking a step towards me, ignoring Clara completely. "The Vaucanson box? I read about that. That was you. Holy crap, the papers said it went for an undisclosed 8-figure sum. Is that true?" I just gave a slight nod. Marcus let out a low whistle. "Jesus, Leo, wow, that's incredible." He looked around the vast, empty villa with new eyes. He wasn't looking at Clara's stolen dream anymore. He was looking at my first acquisition. Clara saw it too. She saw the shift in her fiancé's gaze, the dawning realization that the balance of power in this family had just undergone a seismic event. Her voice, when she spoke again, was small, stripped of all its earlier fire. "No," she whispered. "That's not possible. It was just a hobby. It was lame." It sounded like a prayer, a desperate plea to a universe that had suddenly stopped making sense. "It was only lame because you didn't understand it," I said, with no malice, just simple fact. "You never tried to. It was easier to make jokes, to call it cute, to write me off as the weird little brother." I walked over to the grand, sweeping staircase and ran a hand along the cool stone railing. "So, here's what's going to happen," I said, turning back to face them. "The family is arriving in 2 days for a party, and that party is still happening. But it's not a celebration of your success, Clara. It's a housewarming. My housewarming. You and Marcus will stay here as my guests. You will be gracious. You will be polite. And when everyone arrives, you will smile and tell them how wonderfully surprising my success is and how proud you are of me." "You can't be serious," Clara breathed, horrified. "You want me to what? Pretend for them? Lie to our entire family while you gloat?" "Gloat? No, I'm just setting the record straight. You've been crafting the family narrative for years, Clara. Now it's my turn. You can either play your part, or you can explain to Mom and Dad and everyone else how your financing fell through and your lame brother had to bail you out by buying your dream house right out from under you. Your choice. But your luggage is already here. It would be a shame to leave so soon." Her face was a canvas of pure humiliation. I had trapped her. Her obsession with her image, with appearing perfect and successful, was the cage, and I had just locked the door. She couldn't bear the thought of the family knowing the truth of her failure. But the thought of playing hostess at my party in her own stolen dream was a unique form of torture she couldn't have imagined. Before she could answer, the deep rumble of a large truck echoed from the driveway, its engine cutting through the tranquil afternoon. We all turned as the sound of its air brakes hissed through the open doorway. A man in a work uniform hopped out and came to the door, holding a clipboard. "Signor Leo?" he asked, peering inside. "We have the delivery for you, the big one. Where do you want it?" Clara and Marcus looked at me, confused. I smiled. "Ah, excellent, right on time. Bring it to the center of the grand salon," I said, pointing to the cavernous room just off the foyer. "It's the centerpiece." 2 more men went to the back of the truck and began unstrapping a massive shrouded object. It was huge, at least 12 feet long and covered in heavy moving blankets. They carefully wheeled it up a ramp and began maneuvering it through the front doors. As they angled it through the entryway, a corner of the blanket slipped, revealing a section of what lay beneath. It was a panel of intricately inlaid wood, gleaming with a dark, polished finish, showing a complex pattern of mythological creatures and geometric shapes. Clara gasped. Her eyes widened in horrified recognition. She knew exactly what it was. It wasn't rustic chic furniture. It wasn't a piece of modern art. It was a bespoke museum-quality tabletop, a gaming table, designed to my exact specifications and crafted by a master artisan in Florence. It was the throne for my lame hobby, and I was placing it right in the heart of her stolen kingdom. The silence as the movers carefully positioned the massive gaming table was thick with unspoken fury. Clara watched, her face pale and rigid, as if she were witnessing an act of sacrilege. To her, that grand salon was meant for cocktail parties and photo shoots, a stage for her curated life. Placing my monument to all things geeky in its center was a profound personal desecration. Marcus, on the other hand, was now looking at the table with a sort of grudging awe, his financier's brain clearly trying to calculate the cost of such a custom piece. Once the movers had it perfectly centered on the marble floor, they meticulously unwrapped it. The table was a work of art. The playing surface was a deep green felt, surrounded by a wide border of polished mahogany inlaid with mother of pearl. It had built-in dice towers, recessed player stations with cup holders, and hidden drawers for game pieces. It was magnificent, absurd, and entirely mine. "It's beautiful," Marcus breathed, almost involuntarily. Clara shot him a look that could curdle milk. "It's a monstrosity," she whispered, her voice tight with venom. "You put that thing in the heart of my house." "My house," I corrected her gently, running a hand over the smooth, cool wood. "And it's not a thing, it's the centerpiece. Every great house needs a heart, a place where people gather. This is ours." "Ours?" she scoffed. "There is no ours. There is you, gloating in this palace you stole, and there is me, your prisoner." "You're not a prisoner, Clara. You're a guest, and you still haven't told me your decision. Will you be staying and playing your part for the family, or shall I have someone help you with your bags?" I turned my back to her, busying myself with opening one of the hidden drawers, the smooth click of the latch echoing in the cavernous room. I knew her answer. Her pride was a powerful force, but her terror of being seen as a failure was stronger. She didn't answer right away. I could feel her eyes burning into my back. Finally, I heard a resigned sigh. "Fine," she said, the word clipped and brittle. "I'll stay. I'll play your stupid game." "Excellent," I said, without turning around. "I've already had the master suite prepared for you and Marcus. It has the best view. I thought you'd appreciate that." It was a petty power move, giving her the room she'd coveted most, but making it clear it was a gift, not a right. I heard her heels click angrily as she stormed off towards the grand staircase, Marcus trailing behind her like a confused puppy. The next 48 hours were a masterclass in passive aggression. Clara moved through the villa like a ghost haunting her own life, speaking only when absolutely necessary. She'd appear for the meals I had catered, sitting silently at one end of the massive dining table I'd had delivered, picking at her food while I discussed logistical details with the party planner on the phone. Marcus, however, was a different story. His initial shock had given way to a fawning, almost desperate curiosity. He'd casually ask me questions about the auction, about my investments, about other rare pieces I might have my eye on. He was re-evaluating. The weirdo brother-in-law was suddenly a visionary investor, and he was desperate to get in on the ground floor. I gave him vague, non-committal answers, enjoying his transparent sycophancy. The day of the party arrived. bright and impossibly perfect. The staff I'd hired were buzzing around, setting up tables on the main terrace, chilling champagne, arranging flowers. Clara appeared mid-morning, dressed in a stunning, cream-colored linen dress. She looked every bit the lady of the manor she had always dreamed of being. The only thing out of place was the stony, resentful expression that never left her face. She was playing her part, but under duress. The first cars started arriving around 4 o'clock. My aunts, my uncles, cousins, all spilling out onto the gravel driveway with gifts and exclamations of wonder. "Clara, my goodness, it's even more beautiful than your pictures," my Aunt Carol gushed, hugging my sister tightly. Clara forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It's incredible, isn't it? I'm just overwhelmed." Her eyes flickered towards me as she said it, a silent message of pure hatred passing between us. I played my part too, the humble, surprised brother. I let Clara and Marcus greet everyone, letting them soak in the initial praise. I hung back, shaking hands, accepting pats on the back. My parents were the last to arrive. My mother was practically vibrating with excitement. "Oh, Clara!" she cried, rushing to embrace her. "You did it! You really did it! Your father and I are just so proud." My dad clapped Marcus on the shoulder. "Well done, son. You take good care of our girl. She aimed for the stars, and she got there." This was it. The moment I had been waiting for. The entire family was gathered on the terrace. The sun was beginning its slow descent, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The champagne was flowing. Everyone was raising a glass to Clara, the golden child, the embodiment of success. Clara stood in the center of the crowd, a champagne flute in her hand, a brittle smile plastered on her face. She looked like a queen holding court, but I could see the terror in her eyes. She was waiting for the axe to fall. My dad cleared his throat, tapping his glass for attention. "A toast," he announced, his voice booming with pride, "to my daughter, Clara, for showing us all what it means to dream big and work hard, for building this incredible life for herself. We are so proud of you. To Clara and her beautiful new home." "To Clara," the family echoed. As they all took a sip, I stepped forward. "I'd like to propose a toast as well," I said, my voice cutting through the celebratory chatter. The crowd turned to look at me. Clara's eyes widened, a flicker of panic in their depths. "I want to thank my sister," I began, raising my own glass. "She truly is an inspiration. She taught me that you should never give up on your dreams, no matter how lame or cute other people might think they are." I looked directly at her. "She also taught me that sometimes, when your financing falls through on your dream house, it helps to have a brother who just sold a dusty old puzzle box for an 8-figure sum." A confused murmur rippled through the family. My dad lowered his glass, his brow furrowed. "Leo, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about this," I said, projecting my voice so everyone could hear. "Thank you all so much for coming to my housewarming party. I couldn't have bought this place without my sister's excellent taste in real estate, and for that, Clara, I am eternally grateful. Welcome, everyone, to my home." The terrace went completely, utterly silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the stone floor. Every single person was staring at me, then at Clara, then back at me. Her face, which had been pale, was now a deep, blotchy red. Her knuckles were white where she gripped her champagne flute. My mother looked like she was about to faint. Clara's composure finally spectacularly shattered. "He's lying," she shrieked, her voice high and shrill. "He's insane. He's a jealous, pathetic nobody who forged documents to try and ruin my moment." Just as she said the word ruin, a sleek black car I didn't recognize pulled quietly up the driveway. It hadn't crunched on the gravel. It was an electric vehicle, and it moved with a silent, predatory grace. The family was too engrossed in our drama to notice, but I did. A uniformed driver got out and opened the back door. A woman emerged, tall and elegant in a sharply tailored business suit, her silver hair pulled back in a chic bun. It was Signora Rossi, the real estate agent, and she wasn't alone. Behind her, a grim-faced man in a dark suit got out of the other side. He carried a leather briefcase and had the unmistakable air of a lawyer. Signora Rossi scanned the crowd on the terrace, her eyes landing on me. She gave a curt, professional nod, then her gaze shifted to my shrieking sister. Her expression hardened. She strode towards the terrace with a sense of purpose that made my stomach clench. This was not a social call. This was very, very bad. Signora Rossi ascended the terrace steps like a judge approaching the bench, her heels making sharp, authoritative clicks that cut through Clara's frantic denials. The lawyer followed a pace behind, his eyes sweeping across the stunned faces of my family. All attention shifted from me to the newcomers. "Signor Leo," Signora Rossi said, her voice crisp and formal, ignoring Clara completely. "My apologies for the intrusion. We tried to reach you by phone." "What is the meaning of this?" my father demanded, stepping forward. "Who are you people?" "My name is Elena Rossi," she said, addressing my father but keeping her eyes locked on me. "I represent the estate that sold this villa, and this," she gestured to the man beside her, "is Avvocato Moretti, my legal counsel." Clara, emboldened by the interruption she assumed was on her behalf, rushed forward. "Thank God you're here. Tell them all that my brother is a delusional liar and a squatter. Tell them this is my house." Signora Rossi turned her head slowly to face my sister, her expression one of utter disdain. "Signorina," she said, her voice dripping with ice, "the last time we spoke, you were begging my client for a 48-hour extension that he was under no obligation to grant, an extension you failed to meet. The villa was subsequently sold, legally and definitively, to your brother. His payment was immediate and irrefutable. Your claim to this property is, to use a technical term, non-existent." The finality in her voice was absolute. Clara staggered back as if she'd been struck. My mother let out a small gasp. "Then, why are you here?" I asked, a knot of unease tightening in my stomach. This still didn't feel right. Avvocato Moretti stepped forward and opened his briefcase. "We are here," he said in heavily accented but precise English, "because of a complication, a rather serious one. It seems your sister, in her desperation, did more than just miss her financing deadline." He pulled out a document and handed it to me. "This is a copy of a wire transfer confirmation submitted to our offices 2 days ago, purportedly from a secondary lender, securing her purchase. It is, of course, a forgery." The blood drained from my face. I looked at Clara. Her face was ashen. The blotchy red of anger was gone, replaced by the stark white of pure terror. "And this," the lawyer continued, pulling out a second document, "is a copy of a signed affidavit from the bank in question, confirming the document is fraudulent. This is a federal crime in Italy, Signorina. Bank fraud carries a severe penalty." The world seemed to tilt. This went far beyond a family squabble, beyond humiliation and revenge. Clara hadn't just lied to the family. She had committed a serious crime in a foreign country. Marcus looked at her, his face a mask of horror and disbelief. He took a half step away from her, a small but definitive movement of self-preservation. "My client, the original seller, is an elderly man who values his peace," Signora Rossi said, her voice softening slightly as she looked at me. "He has no desire for a public scandal, but the bank is legally obligated to report the fraud. The authorities have been notified." My mother started to sob, a low, wretched sound. My father looked 10 years older, his face collapsing in on itself. The entire family stood frozen, champagne glasses hanging limply in their hands. The festive party atmosphere had evaporated, replaced by the grim chill of a wake. However, Avocado Moretti said, looking at me intently. The bank has indicated that if full restitution is made for their investigative costs, and if the aggrieved party, in this case, you, the legal owner who was briefly and fraudulently challenged, does not press charges for the disruption, they may be inclined to view the matter as an internal family dispute rather than malicious international fraud. The implication was clear. They were offering me a choice. I could let the Italian justice system swallow my sister whole, or I could make it all go away. The cost would be mine to bear, both financially and emotionally. I looked at Clara. She wasn't the dazzling influencer anymore. She wasn't the smug, condescending sister. She was just a terrified woman, stripped of all her pretenses, her life crumbling around her because of an ambition that had curdled into criminality. Her eyes, for the first time I could remember, met mine with no hint of rivalry or disdain. They were pleading. All the anger, all the years of resentment, all my desire for this grand moment of vindication, it all felt hollow now. Seeing her so utterly broken brought me no satisfaction. There was no victory in this, only wreckage. I had wanted to teach her a lesson to knock her off her pedestal. I had never wanted to destroy her. I took a deep breath. What are the costs? I asked the lawyer, my voice steady. He named a figure. It was substantial, but to me it was manageable. It was a fraction of what I had paid for the table sitting in the salon. I looked at my parents, at my mother's tear-streaked face and my father's broken expression. I looked at my aunts and uncles, their faces etched with shock and pity, and I looked back at Clara. "I'll pay it," I said quietly, "on one condition." Every eye in the place was on me. Clara looked up, a flicker of hope in her eyes. "You are going to tell them the truth," I said, my voice leaving no room for argument. "All of it. Right here, right now. You're going to tell them about the loan, the lies, the forged documents, and you are going to apologize. Not just to me, to Mom and Dad, for the years of making them worry about me, for manipulating them into thinking I was a failure to make yourself look better. You're going to own every last bit of it." Tears began to stream down Clara's face, but these weren't tears of rage or self-pity. They were tears of raw, painful surrender. She nodded, unable to speak. And so she did. In a halting, broken voice, in front of the entire family, my sister confessed everything. She talked about the immense pressure she felt to be perfect, the jealousy she'd harbored for my quiet passion, something she could never understand. She admitted that she'd mocked my hobby because she was terrified that my simple, authentic happiness was more real than her carefully constructed brand. She apologized to our parents, and then she turned to me. "Leo," she whispered, her voice cracking, "I am so sorry. I was a monster. I was so wrapped up in my own image I couldn't see anything else. I couldn't see you." The great housewarming, my grand moment of triumph, had become a painful, necessary family intervention. There were no more toasts that evening. Signora Rossi and her lawyer left after I signed the papers to cover the bank's costs. The guests departed quietly, one by one, with somber hugs and whispered words of support. In the end, it was just me, Clara, Marcus, and our parents left on the terrace as the stars came out over the Tuscan hills. Marcus quietly announced he was going to a hotel, a clear signal that his and Clara's partnership was over. Clara didn't even seem to notice. She stayed at the villa for another week, not in the master suite, but in a small guest room. We didn't talk much, but the silence was different. It wasn't angry anymore. It was contemplative. One afternoon, I found her in the grand salon, tentatively touching the inlaid wood of the gaming table. "It really is beautiful," she said softly. What do you do with it?" So I showed her. I opened a drawer and pulled out one of my favorites, a beautifully crafted game about building a stained glass window. I explained the rules. We played a game, just the two of us, in the heart of the magnificent villa. She was clumsy at first, but she listened. For the first time, she actually saw my world. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. Our family had a lot of healing to do. But as we sat there, rolling dice in the quiet Italian afternoon, I realized my revenge had been a lame hobby after all. My real victory wasn't owning the villa. It was this quiet, fragile, and long overdue beginning. I hadn't just bought a house. I'd bought us a second chance.